Hello and welcome to this webinar that BharatShakti.in is hosting on behalf of the Ministry of Defense. First and foremost, on behalf of Bharat Shakti, I would like to thank the Ministry of Defense and the DDP for giving us an opportunity to host this seminar. We are possibly the only media organization which has been given such an opportunity, and we consider it a great responsibility for us. Before I go any further, I would like to play a video film of DefExpo, which the MOD has made. Right, let's get started with the business for the day. The title of our seminar is Indian Defense Industry's Growth is Linked Umbilically to MSMEs. Well, I think if you believe in the fact that a chain is as strong as the weakest link in the chain, you will realize there's a lot of truth when I say that MSMEs are central to the strength that we require in our defense sector. After all, no big OEM or no huge conglomerate in India either constructs a complete platform. The components, subcomponents, sub-assemblies, assemblies, these are all manufactured by our MSMEs. In case they can produce quality, in case they can produce standardization, sustain the standards that they're supposed to maintain, I think will go a long distance. Well, let's see. We have some very eminent speakers available to us today, and they will be dwelling on it. But before that, let me first give you an idea about the construct of the seminar. How is it going to roll out? We'll have two sessions. Moment I finish, we'll have the opening session. Opening session, we have only one speaker. That's Nitin Gokhale. And thereafter, we have one technical session. Technical session, we have three very eminent speakers. One is AVM Mike Fernandez. I'll give details about them a little later when they have to speak. And then we have Dr. Nagendra Babu, and finally we have Lieutenant Colonel Velan. Now, let's start with the opening session now. And before I request Nitin Gokhale to give his opening statement, let me just read out a little bit of his biodata. Well, he's been a journalist all his life. He's considered by most, I would say, people in the business of journalism as one of South Asia's leading strategic analysts. He started his career sometime in 1983, and in the past 39, 40 years, well, he's gone across both broadcast, web, in fact, print also, all three of them. He's a specialist in conflict coverage, actually. Gokhale has lived and reported from India's northeast for about 23 years, writing, analyzing various insurgencies in that region. He's been on ground in two battlefield conditions, actually been there on ground, and one was Kargil, the other was the Sri Lankan Elam War 4. That was between 2006 and 2009. He's an alumni of the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Hawaii. Gokhale now writes, lectures, analyzes security and strategic matters in Indo-Pacific and travels regularly to various countries like China, US, Europe, South and Southeast Asia, and speaks at various international seminars and conferences. Gokhale is also a popular visiting faculty in the Indian Defence Services Staff College. The National Defence College is also the College of Defence Management. He's also been to the intelligence schools of RNAW and IB. He now runs in two important digital platforms, bharatshakti.in and StatNews Global. In addition, I must say that he has written about half a dozen or more books. And in fact, I am a co-author with him one of those books. So Nitin, with that as a backdrop, if you could just get the business going.
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I can see on YouTube there are more attendees. I can see about 36 people on YouTube, and I think 10 odd people on this WebEx. So on a busy working afternoon, this is a substantial number, I would say. And like Brigadier Chatterjee, who we are colleagues in the same organization, I must thank Department of Defense Production and all the other panelists who have taken time off to come here, and the Department of Defense Production for giving us this opportunity. I will not take more than 5 to 7 minutes because we've already into about 10 minutes of the program. So basically, I think it's a no-brainer to say that MSMEs are an important part of the supply chain the world over. No big conglomerate, and we have AVM Mike Fernandez from Lockheed Martin here, who will also testify to the fact that the MSMEs make up for nearly 60% of their supply chain the world over, not necessarily just in the US. And to state that the capability and viability of the aerospace and defense sector is built on the strength of supply chains in which MSMEs are closely intertwined is stating the obvious. What has happened in the past 7 years since India started looking at Make in India as a major shift in emphasis and policy, and mainly in defense? The MSMEs have certainly got the kind of boost that they required to try and come into the defense sector. Our own platform, bharatshakti.in, was started in November 2015 with the tagline self-reliance in defense. And if self-reliance has to be attained, Atmanirbharta has to be attained, by India, then MSMEs are a crucial, excuse me, crucial part of the entire system. And therefore, I think this particular session of webinar that we're doing is extremely important. There are, according to Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh's own speech in December 2021, I can see that he mentioned that 12,000 MSMEs have joined the defense sector. He didn't specify the time period in which he is basing that number on, but I'm guessing it must be in the last 5 years or so. While he was giving away some awards, he spoke about this. Special incentives have been given by the Defense Ministry, as we know. I was looking at some of the figures, and not just to the MSMEs, but even to the startups, which then go on to become MSMEs as they mature and as they grow, and when their products are accepted, they also join the sector, the MSME sector. According to the MOD's own figures, rupees 1,000 crores has been earmarked for procurement from startups in 21 fiscal year 21-22, 2021-22. This is the first time this has been this kind of a reservation or this kind of a categorization has been done for procurement from the startups. Similarly, as all of you know here, I don't have to say this to the audience here. 15% of the total capital procurement budget has been earmarked for procurement from private industry in 2021-22. And out of that, I suspect nearly 30% would go to the MSMEs because they form the chain that Brigadier Chatterjee was mentioning. Also, in this year's budget, 68% of the total capital procurement has been earmarked for the domestic industry. Of course, majority of it will go to the public sector, I suppose. But even that, if you look at it, it is gradually increasing the share of the domestic industry. In 2021, it was 58% at about 51 crores. In 21-22, it rose to 64% of the total capital procurement, going up to 71,000 crores plus. And this year, as we know, it's gone up to 68% in percentage terms. So clearly, the emphasis on Make in India, on Atmanirbharta, and even if OEMs want to come in, they want to have their products displayed or inducted into the Indian Armed Forces, then they need to have a Indian facility, Indian joint venture. So no matter which way you look, the MSMEs have the important role to play because OEMs, whether Indian, foreign, or public sector, will have to depend and do depend on the MSMEs because not everything can be done under one roof. And that's where I think the Indian MSME sector, which of course has had its problems of cash flow, of no bank loans, or very difficult bank loans to come by, all that will have to be overcome if the MSMEs have to play the role. And as we look ahead, there are two major programs in the aerospace sector. LCA has orders have been placed by the Air Force, and so has the C295, which is truly a Make in India project, which will actually boost the MSME sector and the ecosystem in India. Because C295 is the first of its kind of an arrangement where there is an OEM, Airbus, and there is a local Indian defense company, Tata's, who will then in turn pass on the requirements or production to the MSMEs. So there is a cascading effect that is going to come. Policies I have mentioned, there are very focused policies for MSMEs in the MOD's policy making as well as in its approach. There is much more openness, there is much more interaction between the MOD officials, services, service headquarters. There are separate directorates in all the three service headquarters which look after indigenization, innovation, and also Make in India in terms of how to encourage and give access, more open access to MSMEs. But there are problems which we must not brush under the carpet as far as the MSME sector is concerned. And I hope the panelists will speak about it. One is, of course, if you're looking at it from the angle of a foreign OEM, one of the problems that the foreign OEMs face is the lack of world standards or the requisite standards in the MSMEs to come up to the requirements that the global standards have, or their standards on the global scale have. So the MSMEs will have to upgrade their skills, their facilities, the kind of machinery and the skills that they have. Only then the global OEMs will look at India as a source for getting the supply chain going from India for some of their platforms and weapons that they manufacture. That's one. Second is the absence of regular orders from the MOD or frequent orders from the MOD. And if the frequent orders are taken care of, then the lack of timely payments from the MOD, which we have personally seen. We have actually organized webinars and seminars, in-person seminars in small places like Belgaum, Nashik, Pune, and other places. In fact, in Chennai also. Chennai is not a small place, but we have organized it there. And perpetual complaint is the disruptive cash flow that they face, and we come across many examples. So again, MOD officials and MOD policy makers must take a closer look at it. That how do you keep the MSMEs afloat? They do not have the staying power if payments don't come on time, if orders don't come regularly. They must also, so these are some of the problems that must be overcome to realize the correct potential or the real potential of the MSMEs is what I feel. If India has to become self-sustaining in defense or has to become Atmanirbhar as we are calling it these days. One final point here, the MOD and the services are also undergoing huge digital transformation in its functioning, in their functioning. And there is a scope there, not just for good old manufacturing, shop floor manufacturing, but also to look at future technologies, look at IT sector, look at services, where MSMEs can actually foray into and make their presence felt, and maybe take more advantage of the huge procurement acquisition budgets, both in revenue and capital segment that the MOD has. That is something that they must look at. I think I'm going to stop here because there are experts waiting to speak and give their opinion on how MSMEs are not just a vital part, but are the most essential part of any supply chain, and how India has to harness their potential going forward. Thank you very much for joining in. And once again, thanks for this opportunity, MOD and Department of Defense Production. Over to you, Brigadier Chatterjee.
Thank you, Nitin. Thanks for giving it a real broad brush and getting a lot of things into the purview. In fact, I want to just highlight one or two points that you have said before you get on to the next speaker. As far as the money availability is concerned, I think Nitin talked about it. A huge part of the capital budget is being reserved for, well, Indian companies, Indian products. That's one side of it. The second one I would say is he has asked you guys who are there in the MSMEs, who are leading MSMEs, who are working for or MSMEs, that you have to maintain certain standards. I've often heard in my interaction with military people who are at the receiving end of the equipment that what comes as a sample is not necessarily what comes thereafter in bulk. So you have to standardize your products and you have to maintain that standard. The third point, I think, which he talked in the passing, and I think I want to emphasize, is the attitudinal aspect that today we are much more open. There's a lot of openness in the ministry. In fact, I have attended conferences in the ministry where people from the industry were invited there and they were sitting with us. And I remember my days in the army headquarters, one used to keep a mile-long distance between, well, any of the staff officers there and industry reps. It wasn't really looked at very rationally at all. So that's the kind of atmosphere that we have. So there is a certain amount of responsibilities on MSMEs also. And what I think perhaps our next speaker, Mike Fernandez of Larsen Tobro, he's
Lockheed Martin.
Of Lockheed Martin. ABM Mike Fernandez is the Director Aeronautics of Lockheed Martin. A little bit about the man as such. Well, he was born in Mumbai and was commissioned in the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in 1982. Basically I would say front-end air warrior. I would call him. He's an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, the Defense Services Staff College, Asia Pacific Center of Security Studies, Hawaii, Air Warfare College of USA. He's credited about 3,800 hours of flying on various fighter aircraft. After the career in the Air Force, he superannuated as Air Vice Marshal in 2018. Subsequently, he joined Lockheed Martin India Private Limited and is currently the Director's Aeronautics India. Well, he's going to talk to us about expectations and benchmarks MSMEs need to attain, which is something I think very important for MSMEs. Over to you, Matt. You're mute. You're mute.
Brigadier Chatterjee, and thanks, Nitin, for having me on this panel. Thank you for all those kind words, Brigadier Chatterjee. As both of you all mentioned, there's nothing new that that we're going to be saying in this webinar, and it's something that's very known and established. But as a soldier, if I was to go back to the thought of grand strategy and how that feeds into national power, national security, and how it looks at the well-being of an entire country. Everything normally stems from the kind of the prowess, your prowess to ensure security for the well-being of the people of your country. And this comes from the kind of defense manufacturing capability, not only manufacturing, the defense thought, the defense capability that a country actually has. And when you look at that, and as I look at it today, as I transformed from uniform to business suit in Lockheed Martin, I see it being so important for the MSMEs, since I have started dealing with them now, as a feeder to ensure not just the defense production, but national security. Because during war, we always realize that finally you only have yourself to rely on, very, very famously. And a lot of this is coming from the MSMEs. Uh, I looked at the title of the webinar and saw it written as umbilically connected. So I fully agree that it's very strongly connected. If you look at umbilically, it's very strongly connected. My thought went from the umbilical thing actually looks at a one-to-one relationship, though it's very strong. It's a one-to-one relationship. I would look at the MSME if I was to relate it to the a body function more like the arteries and veins, which are actually spread out all over, different sizes, different thicknesses, different areas of the body, uh, contributing to the well-being of the body itself. Uh, and I say this because the MSMEs have a very, very important role to play as I see it now. Uh, Brigadier Chatterjee spoke about the large companies, the large defense companies, being mainly aggregators and integrators. There are very little things that are produced or manufactured. We normally get most of the things from our suppliers, our tier one, tier two, tier three, put them together and then put the aircraft together. And most of those things are coming from MSMEs who are supporting us very, very strongly. A large company like Lockheed Martin or any of these big companies uh, do not have monopolies over very, very niche technologies. For very often, for niche technologies which are very, very focused and very, very critical, we have to rely on people who have that capability to produce small, very important, and very high tech components. This cannot be there with every large company that's putting it together, and therefore that's one of the importance of having the MSME work. Uh, MSMEs have the capability to be very focused on the capability that they are slowly developing or they have already, and these could be very, very niche. These niche capabilities there can be very, very quickly attuned to emerging demands because they are small, they're high tech, they're going in a certain direction. It is easier because of the focus that they have in that to quickly attune with the change in technology, change in demand. It's easier for the smaller MSME to change and meet the consumer requirements. Uh, MSMEs have, because of their sizes, they're not very large monoliths. They have the agility and the versatility to change fast, to adapt to new demands. These are all the benefits that the MSMEs bring to the table, and that is why they're such an important part of national security. I, I, as I look at it, I really feel that the MSMEs are the ones who contribute in their own way to even very strongly to the spreading of well-being in the country, because they are the people who can go out to the more mufassil areas, the more rural areas, set up plants and bring livelihoods to people over there, and then feed it back to the center where they are integrated. I you know, uh, when I look at it from the air warrior point of view, uh, I always look at it as a distribution of targets. Even there's no, whether it's COVID or whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a catastrophe that happens, it could be floods, wildfires, could be anything. If you have the MSME spread over wider geographical areas, you're spreading the wealth, you're keeping it safe by ensuring that it's not all clustered and concentrated in one area. And those are the other benefits of the MSMEs. Coming to the defense MSMEs, which are a very uh, a special part of the MSME larger picture. Uh, the defense MSMEs have very stringent restrictions, quality specs that they have to meet. They are much higher and more demanding. The equipment that they use is definitely more expensive. They are very accurate, very cutting edge. The leeway is much less. And when MSMEs have to invest in these kind of equipment, it calls for large amount of investments and large money inflow into equipping themselves. The certifications themselves for aerospace are very expensive, whether it's the AS 9100 or the ISO family of certifications. They are expensive, they are time consuming, and they definitely put a high demand on defense MSMEs, especially in the aerospace and defense sector. Uh, when I spoke to some of the MSMEs that we interact with, they said that the returns that they do get for the work that they put in are adequate, and it's okay because the number of people who can actually get into the sector are smaller. The investments are much higher. So the people who are already in the MSMEs who are already in the sector have adequate amounts in terms of economic returns that come to them. How this would change as the number of defense MSMEs expand or increase would need to be studied and understood a little better and more deeply. For me, though, Nitin and Brigadier Chatterjee both mentioned about the higher amounts being given for indigenous manufacture in India, I still feel that whatever you say, and even if you go, let's suppose you give 100% of your capital budget for indigenous manufacture, you're talking about $20 billion in a year. And as Nitin said, if the MSMEs have increased to 12,000 of them, that pie is rather small that have so many mouths to feed, because finally they would be going down to them at the further end. So would you have adequacy of volumes to make sure that MSMEs are getting enough to progress further, to improve their equipment, possibly looking at better developments, whether they can upskill the people who are working for them to a much higher grade, and whether you give them the agility and flexibility to actually foray into a new avenue, at the risk of not having enough of returns. So that is one thing that I think is debatable. Just now it is 68% of the $20 billion, so that would make it about 13 to $14 billion, and that's what we can say would definitely come. And I'll come to this a little later about the need for volumes. Uh, when we come to the requirements and the benchmarks that are required for aerospace MSMEs, the first and most important area that we do look at are our past performance And what is your current portfolio? How do you perform currently, and what all have you done to get to a stage where we think you could be a supplier to us? The AS 9100 is an absolute necessity, which we definitely look for. And if we do find that uh, you have the wherewithal to actually be a supplier to us, that we look at the robustness of your processes that you have in place. How does your MSME actually function? And therefore, that could be best assessed by the OEM possibly visiting the manufacturing site, which we normally do. As opposed to normal MSMEs, or even possibly a lot of the aerospace MSMEs that we are dealing with today are ones that have evolved from possibly the automobile MSMEs of the past, which had the wherewithal and then gradually upgraded and are now doing aerospace work. And uh, the processes that we do look at have to be through the entire life cycle, from development to production, uh, right down to the end, because it's part of a defense and very, very sensitive technology and manufacturing process. Cybersecurity, which would not get so much of attention in other MSMEs, is definitely looked at very strongly. How open, or how closed, how safe you are. What kind of product assurance is given to you, to the OEM who's picking up the parts that you are supplying? What kind of anti-tamper uh, process or certificate regulations do you have in your MSMEs to ensure that whatever comes out is absolutely what was required by the OEM that's taking it from you? Uh, Information assurances, how safe it is, how correct it is, and how well it is kept, and what kind of counterfeit mechanisms do you have to ensure that the materials that you get are absolutely correct and pure. So these kind of higher demands definitely make the defense MSME a very what should I say? It's a difficult, and it demands a lot more than just being a normal MSME. The requirements are rather stringent and much higher at a much higher level. For the OEM, you we would want to ensure that we have deeper scrutiny of the supply chains of the MSMEs, and not only the supply chains, even the waste streams need to be looked at as to what really happens to the waste, where does it go, how does it control, what is going out, is there anything else that's flowing out from that part. And the certification would be checked regularly from everything, whether it's your materials, to whether it's electronics, to whether it's your washers, it's your plastics, metals. Everything would be checked very, 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 very closely, uh, mainly to ensure traceability in case something goes wrong, to pinpoint what would have gone wrong, why did it go wrong, and correct for that, and make sure that the risk reduction exists for anything counterfeit coming into the system. Defense MSMEs are costly because you have to continuously upgrade your equipment. The demands are becoming much more. Technology is changing very fast, and besides the instrumentation, tooling, and machinery having to change, you also have to look at upskilling the people that you have within your company. So possibly you could train them and upskill them, but the time between by the time they finish the training to the time they actually reach maturity, there is quite a large timeline which actually you have to absorb. Uh, Having said that, I think I've spoken enough. But if I was to talk about, if I can get 2 minutes more to talk about the solutions that I was thinking of, when you look at MSME, what makes an MSME different from a startup? I think a startup is more kind of is more business to consumer. They're not so much into manufacturing. They would look at creating an app which would address the consumer need much faster. They would innovate much faster. Whereas the defense MSME is more directed into manufacturing and those kind of things, which are a little more are telling. I do agree with Nitin when he says that digital transformation has become a big thing in even our companies, the big companies, and I'm sure that's where we can get MSMEs to come in. But having said that, I do wish that there could be the same kind of environment that the government has created for startups to exist for defense MSMEs. There should be some kind of hand holding. There should be some kind of allowance given to them, some amount of fiscal funding. Uh, uh, and for that reason, I feel that the MSMEs, if they are looking for this kind of hand holding, generating enough of revenues to look after their upgradations and upskilling, they need very honestly to tie up with someone who can offer them this economies of business and volumes. I do feel in my mind, and being in uh, being from Lockheed Martin, I see the kind of aircraft that we fly over the world. You got 3,000 aircraft, F-16s that are flying currently in the world. C-130 is another huge number of aircraft that are flying, enormous numbers. And if you can just manage to get into this global supply chain, we are looking at getting good economies of volumes and ensuring that uh, the MSME ecosystem for defense definitely does well. Lockheed Martin currently in India has about 500 suppliers. We've got 170 MSMEs feeding into our JVs and giving us items for our empennages and fighter wings. And uh, 70 of our suppliers are already feeding into our global supply chain. So that's how well established Lockheed Martin is in India as a Make in India company, doing a lot of work and getting very, very good results. We are very, very happy with the kind of workmanship we are getting from our MSMEs. Very, very happy to be in India. Sorry, Brigadier, if I've taken a little extra time, but I finished. Thank you.
Thank you, A. Marshall. Thank you so much. I think very lucid talk and very broad-based. But before I highlight the odd point that I'm totally with you or without you, but let me just ask for any questions that anybody has. You can please raise your hand on the screen and then I'll know where to unmute you. Dick? Hmm?
My name is Navdeep, and currently I am working with MSME Commissionerate, Gujarat, Gandhinagar. And closely we are working with MSME sector in Gujarat. And there are basically engineering manufacturing units are there, MSMEs are there in Gujarat. And my question is to uh, the gentleman, Mr. Michael. I hope I am taking the right name. So, because one problem what we are facing is a awareness among MSMEs, how they are going to connect, how they are going to take benefit of these outreach program by defense sector, because there are willingness is there among MSMEs. They want to connect. So if your organization, do you run such outreach programs or awareness program, then how we can connect to Gujarat MSMEs to your company, or definitely defense sector also for manufacturing?
May I answer that? Navdeep,
Please, please.
nice to hear that question from you. We have a site, the Lockheed Martin site, that explains how you can become a supplier for us. First and foremost, like I covered in my talk, getting the AS9100 is a given. If you don't have an AS9100, it's unlikely that we would approach you for anything like that. Besides that, every year, Lockheed Martin runs a suppliers conference, which lasts for about 3 days. We have it in different parts of the country. We've had them in Delhi, we've had them in Bangalore. We could look at it somewhere else in due course of time, where a lot of suppliers come and meet us, find out our requirements, explain to us what their capabilities are. We meet them on a one-to-one basis. we have different verticals. So, you can go around and meet different verticals, one for the helicopters, one for the fixed wing, one for the uh, missile and fire control, and one for space. So we have everyone from each of these verticals coming in from America, coming in who would be able to tell you all exactly where you all are, what you all need to do, look at the things that you all produce, and definitely get you all and tell you all how to become part of our supplier chain. So Navdeep, I would be happy to. I'm in touch with the Air Marshal Dheer very closely, who's also with the government of Gujarat and looking after aerospace. Uh, I'll speak with him, and you can always ask him, and we can get in touch. Not an issue.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So nice of you.
All right. Any other questions? Please. Right. I think we'll finish with this as far as your talk is concerned, Eva Marshall. An odd thing that I want to say is perhaps the Air Marshal talked more or less certain things that we had on apprehension. We had expressed apprehensions about. Is our quality as an MSME good enough to be part of the global logistic chain? That's what he talked about. He also talked about that the budget is not enough. But at least I would say that 68% of the capital budget has been kept reserved for you. This is perhaps the first. So there are challenges, huge challenges in this business of coming in as a MSME in the defense sector. Yes, one requires deep pockets. Yes, one requires takes the gestation time is longer. But then those are the challenges, and if you meet those challenges, like the Marshal said, the some MSMEs have told him that the margins are adequate. Well, that's the good news, perhaps. We'll get on with the next topic that we have, and the next topic is Atmanirbharta providing a growth opportunity for MSMEs. And we have a very fine speaker who's going to be talking about it, Dr. Nagendra Babu Samineni. Well, he's currently the Vice President, Electronic Warfare Systems of Zen Technologies. In addition, he's also the Executive Director of Unispring Technical Solutions. He was instrumental in design and development of the indigenized counter UAV systems. He's been with the DRDO for 16 years of experience in design, development of missile systems, system configuration studies, project management, planning and control, scheduling, and all that. Expertise in development of configuration of complex and multi-domain projects in execution of management. Also expertise in design. Academically, he's a PhD from NIT Warangal. Well, with that, Dr. Nagendra, can I ask you to go start up your talk?
Thank you, Brigadier Chatterjee, sir, for giving us this opportunity. So when it comes to understanding about the growth possibilities for the MSMEs, a few points that I would like to stress here. As Gokhale Saab and then you mentioned, as well as AVM Sab has mentioned, yes, okay, so there are opportunities and the MSMEs are taking up in terms of the production, in terms of the delivering the goods as per the user requirements. But what I need to emphasize at this point of time that we should start looking at is more towards IDDM, so where we talk about the design, development, everything by the MSMEs also in certain sectors. Because unless we start developing the IP, unless we start developing the knowledge, the design, the growth possibilities may not be really excellent. So if you study across the industry, the MSMEs dedicatedly working for maybe the defense have reached certain level of stagnation, and then they're just oscillating among those points. Okay, this is essentially because there is something manufacturable design for manufacturability is achieved, and the designs are available. Manufacturing it, maybe options will be there for among the industry. That means you will have 3-4 people who can do the job, or 5-6 people who can do the job. So work has to be shared and all. So we have to start emphasizing on, although IDDM provision has been made, so the projects which are being taken up has to be now increased. More number of projects should be dedicated, or rather should be guided towards working on the IDDM concepts. Okay, I feel this is one area where the growth can really start. In order to achieve this, there are certain limitations also. For example, unlike other areas where startups or small companies can start doing innovation and then coming out with a solution in terms of software or app, coming out with a solution right from the scratch in the design, either for an MSME or from a startup, is a huge technical barrier. So we need to have the programs in order to nurture this kind of development. For example, okay, phase 1, these are the specifications. Phase 2, these are the specifications. From the user side itself, we should be evolving these programs more frequently. Although in certain areas, the programs have been started in this direction, especially the Army Design Bureau, and then the others have started certain programs like this. The numbers have to be increased in this area, which will reduce the entry barriers as well as the barriers for even MSMEs in order to, because if an MSME is already involved in certain part of the technology development and they have an order in terms of execution of the things, so the MSME has to strike a balance among the production as well as allocating resources for R&D, so that they can also come out with the solution for the area of expertise and then continue the already existing production opportunities. So this nurturing has to be done. So probably the emphasis has to be more on this. Only this approach will make us go global in terms of even the product supply. Of course, the bigger companies anyway are going to handle. For example, if I were to deliver as an MSME 100 systems, 200 systems to a foreign country, obviously the Indian MNCs or the big companies in India can just strike those deals and then we can supply from here. This gives us an opportunity to be a global supplier. So we will have to slowly shift our paradigm of the largest importer of the world to maybe slowly start looking at the export opportunities. And I strongly believe this is possible only when we start building our IP knowledge on the products. So this is one area. So there are a lot of examples for that. So once you start designing and then indigenously developing, for example, what happens to the industry is, if we look at, because I'm being a man from the missiles and I've studied closely what happened. In 80s, when we have started IGMDP, see, the development has taken 20 years, and subsequent programs, the deliveries were done within 10 years. The programs which have started, about a decade or 5-6 years ago, their delivery timelines got reduced to 5 years. Now people are talking in the missile stream for each project delivery in 2 to 3 years, right from the scratch to the design. So all this has happened because as the designs started slowly evolving, the Indian companies started doing the design, of course, with the help of DRDO. Then the knowledge base has been built. So the next level of development, the next level of designs, next level of specifications were realized much faster. So that is the edge that any company or any country rather would get if we start thinking on developing more and more companies towards the design. So this is one part. And now the second challenge when in order to take to the growth path for the MSMEs, one is at the opportunity stage itself. This is how it can be addressed. Then the second stage, once the opportunities are received, then how are we going to nurture the industry or support the industry in order to reach the goals? So as Nitin sir mentioned, or Mr. Chatterjee mentioned, Brigadier Chatterjee, so there, the opportunity should be frequently given. So it is not like, okay, long gestation periods, suddenly you get a 200 crore order and next 3 years you don't have anything. So this is also a big problem to most of the MSMEs. So maybe when we are planning at the requirement stage itself, okay, so this approach has to be suggested to the government that, okay, so you start with the 10, 20, 30 yearly phase the requirements and then face the orders so that there is a continuous feed to the industry. So this is the second thing, so that I am ready now. Okay, I will build the infrastructure, get ready. I know because next 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, this is the typical roadmap. Then third point that I would like to mention is once the orders are received. Okay, so as everybody mentioned and agreed that the banking policies, the kind of support that you need, because once the order is received, there are only two things, for anybody to realize. One is you need money, you need people in order to execute the job to the satisfaction. So these are the two things. So this is where another problem. So maybe we should start thinking about special provisions in the banking itself. For example, keep aside 1,000 crore or 2,000 crore fund. Okay, identify 30, 40, 50 industries, and then make special provisions to distribute this exclusive fund to these organizations who have got the orders in hand. Okay, either from the large corporates like Lockheed Martin or maybe L&T or any other or public sector units, or directly from the defense. So earmark this kind of fund as a special thing to various banks. Maybe you can decide 3 banks, 4 banks can be done. So earmark that fund so that that can be specifically allocated once these kind of supply orders are available with the MSMEs, which may enable them, from financial problems or from coming out of the financial problems. And the second, the biggest challenge to the execution that I am seeing is the talent or the people. As AVM Sabal has mentioned, and there is a severe problem, I would say, because most of the defense companies, they are like a part of production. So you have hardware, software, this kind of combination. Unfortunately or fortunately, this industry cannot compete in paying with respect to the pure software companies. So a huge talent migration is happening. Okay, I nurture somebody for 2 years and this guy just vanishes for a bigger company with double, triple packages. So then to pick somebody who is at the very entry level and then make him usable for the requirements is turning to be a big problem for us. So either all MSMEs together or at the government level, or maybe I request even Nitinji at an organization like this, we should start thinking of a few courses or maybe a kind of framework wherein people are being exclusively trained on defense technologies, okay, at least maybe for a year or 2, and the people would invest the time. We can define exclusive technologies, areas where we will, are the large industry needs. So we can configure such programs, or rather we should configure such programs, nurture the talent at a very beginning level towards this, and then make them available to the industry. So some kind of a parallel exercise has to be run. Because today, if you see in my company, the most critical resource for me, the people who solder, people who fit. So we don't find them. So I find a lot of engineers, but they don't do this kind of jobs. So how do we just come out of this challenge? Maybe having this kind of exclusive programs, bringing more awareness, and then ensuring that we have at least some talent which is ready for the industry to be used. Okay. Even if he leaves after a year or 2 years, by that you would have actually contributed something to the company. So this is the second thing that we need to focus, or we need to start thinking so that the MSMEs will really get into the growth trajectory. And of course, if there is a possibility, the next provision that should be made is PLI kind of schemes. The one which recently has been announced for the drones probably could be extended to more defense technologies. Thinking about that is so the production linked incentives, whatever recently has been announced. So maybe this can be thought about for more niche defense sectors, so that there is a possibility for more companies to step into this kind of environment and then start becoming global leaders. So yeah, I think I've covered a majority of the points that I would like to mention. So these 3 aspects were taken care, like indigenous design, then giving some provisions for financial and then manpower supports, okay, making them feasible at least, So then I think we should be able to get the real growth trajectory possible for most of the MSMEs. Thank you, sir. So Brigadier, sir, you are on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Nagendra. Thank you so much for, very illuminating talk. I would say a couple of points that you came out with the first time that I'm hearing in a seminar. But if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. We'll unmute you from here. Right, excellent points. I would like to dwell upon what Dr. Nagendra has already said, because we're running short of time. So I'll get on to the next speaker that we have and the next subject that we have. The subject is conducive environment for growth of MSMEs. And the speaker is Kan Vellen. Just to put in a word about Kan Vellen, though you will have seen him on our channel, on our platform quite a bit. Kan Vellen is an Army veteran. Has been working on GNSS domain from 1998 onwards. He has been associated with Naval and IRNSS since its inception in 2008. He was the system manager for development of monitoring system and GIS for the armed forces for quite a few years, 2003 to 2011 to be exact. He had taken premature retirement in 2011 to pursue research in this domain. Elena products are results of research combined with his in-depth domain knowledge and experience. Well, nice having you with us, Colonel Vellen. If you can please start off.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. At the outset, I should thank Bharashakti.in for providing this opportunity for me to talk and for all of you to hear me out. Conducive environment for the MSMEs. I'd like to touch on this subject from a different angle. First thing, what are these characteristics of Indian defense which makes Indian MSMEs so vital for them? Then only we can nurture a conducive environment for the MSME. So is there a necessity we need to analyze? From that point of view, if you see, Indian defense actually has got, it's a mega organization which spreads over so many different type of terrain, different types of operations. We have, and within each organization, each terrain, the characteristics are very, very different. If you make one equipment for one type of soldier, within the services, I should say other way around. We cannot make one equipment for one soldier or one type of arm within the services. Basically, you make something for a Gorkha soldier, a Jat soldier will not be able to handle. You make something for a Jat soldier, Gorkha soldier will find he is not able to catch up with that. You may not even be able to have one same vehicle. What's this general thing? We take it for granted that same vehicle can be used by every Jawan or every person within the armed forces. That itself is a different, it's very difficult for the services to adapt it in that manner. If you want to have a defense forces, that's the way it is being projected now, which is more specific to our organization, to our area, to our geopolitical compulsions. Variety is a key word, for which understanding of this variety is the next important thing, which Indian MSMEs alone can give to Indian Defense Forces. Let's see, there's certain specific characteristics within Indian MSMEs which can influence these parameters. First thing, high understanding of the necessity or the need and ability to absorb what the soldier wants at a much faster pace than anyone else. Bigger companies have got their own process of intaking these inputs into them, generally time consuming, whereas an MSME just walks in with the entire team, from the boss to the last man can walk in, representatives can walk in and learn directly from the services. That's advantage the MSMEs bring to the table for the defense forces. Then very low latency in production. You ask for equipment, it gets produced at a very short time. if he understands it, if the wherewithal is within the MSME, it gets produced at very, very, very short time. We have delivered something within 4 weeks' time, completely new product for an organization, and it's now finding its way to Ladakh. So that type of latency is what MSME brings. What AVM Michael Fernandez have also said that, yes, it's MSMEs that what support larger organizations, correct? But MSME needs to support the defense forces directly. That's a necessity. If they do that, then this induction which goes through a small level of accretion or what is a small level of accreditation from these bigger industries, and then they get involved or imbibed into bigger equipment and going is one way. However, today the necessity is to make very many equipment which have terrain specific or area specific applications. Within the defense forces, we have procurement for what they call it as Army Commanders Special Financial Power for procuring for certain locations, certain type of operations. For this type of work, it is MSMEs which can meet them at the earliest. Necessity is there. Procurement within 12 months' time, not procurement within a couple of months and utilize it within 12 months' time. MSMEs have got the ability to address this part. Hence, there is a necessity to give a conducive environment to the MSMEs. Now, what are the factors that are coming in? Many factors have been already outlined by Dr. Nagendra Babu and by Mr. Nitin Gokhale, by Brigadier Chatterjee. Government has brought in very many incentives or very many initiatives. Certain things which could not be thought about earlier on is being tried out now. Government has brought in these things, especially for the MSMEs. Certain procurements, for example, certain procurements where only MSMEs are given preference. Make in India and with MSMEs is given preference. Certain percentage of procurement is also being given in every contract for MSMEs. Then there are some initiatives by the MOD, certain ministries like MOD, where they call upon MSMEs and give a letter of intent, they give a LOI, tell people to participate, come out with certain equipment. The teams, I'm aware of one such project where the minefield monitoring system, they have shortlisted about 25-30 companies to participate in that. All of them are micro and small companies only to participate in it and to bring out the right solution. They're given about 6 months time for them to manufacture it. There are organizations within, which has been outlined already by Mr. Nitin Gokhale, that like Army Design Bureau, which looks into these aspects and helps out people. They've created certain technology nodes all around the country where they identify MSMEs. They call them up, discuss with them, have small events where the MSMEs can showcase their efforts and then take them along. Such mechanism is finding its way inside our environment also. There are defense corridors that are coming up in a big way. These defense corridors are right now, it's just a defense corridor. It's not focused on certain amount of certain technologies or certain specific application areas. Yeah, we might have something big set up at Bangalore, which looks into the aerospace segment. Yeah, good ecosystem with HAL and ADA, everyone bringing up a good, huge ecosystem for the aviation industry. Similar things, if it could come up along with these defense corridors, it will actually have a lot of impact on these MSMEs which are vying to get into this defense corridor. And there, these MSMEs will be able to make a lot of difference for certain type of applications. Certain applications like drones, it's completely new for the warfare itself. This entire space can be filled in by MSMEs. Rightly so, government has given a lot of incentives, like in terms of PLI. They have streamlined the entire drone industry functioning within a span of 6 months, taken out almost every fortnight. There's a new policy coming up. There's an interaction policy with interaction from the industry or from people who are into drones. That's a major thing. And these are certain incentives or conducive environment the government is trying to make. But one question stands out is that the implementation part of it. Anything is good only if it's implemented in full sense. Let's leave it as a question there. See certain direct measures that can help people. Many measures have been outlined by speakers before me. Giving tax holidays is one thing which we could look into. Then standards. There are certain standards, yes, to make a product which is globally viable or a global, product which can be making in India should have a standard of very stringent nature. But a product for a certain type of application, for example, deserts, why should you test out why should equipment being made for a desert meet requirement of minus 30 degrees mill standard laid down by others or JSS standards? Desert can never go below minus 10 degrees. Least is the operation part of it. Why should we never test it? These are the issues if we can look into. Maybe we can have our MSMEs located in the desert sector, creating equipment for the military, for the defense employed there. From MSME point of view, there is no separate organization as they see. A couple of MSMEs, when I was in service, employed in the Western sector, I had interacted, is that they see everyone as just a forge. They don't see any difference between Air Force, Navy, or Army. That way they don't see it. So from their point of view, whatever they make is for that location and that environment. A couple of equipment which gets fabricated locally always performs much better than what is so-called procured centrally and issued to services. So that part can be exploited. And such steps which can be, if it could be taken to include these people at much more micro level in terms of military wise, I should say it is in terms of a core zone or less than that. In normal parlance, if we tell, let's focus on each state, each couple of districts which are located within a certain zone to provide certain type of equipment to the defense forces in that area. So that's what I was just telling about in terms of standards. Testing facilities, many testing facilities have come. Bigger organizations are giving support in terms of making them available for MSMEs. More could be done in this direction. Main thing is that what Dr. Narendra Babu has touched upon is training of people who are joining the companies. It's very difficult. He has mentioned, he's told it in so many words about how difficult it is to maintain a person with correct quality or to train a person with correct quality. If these people, right at the college level, if they can be told to work with certain MSMEs directly and have some amount of, attach some amount of weightage for their grading, it will be helpful for people to have the right technology, and then what comes inside could be a better talent power which can be directly utilized by MSMEs. Of course, then defense will benefit in a big way. I should thank again for the opportunity provided, sir. And thanks everyone. I have said about the conducive environment, what needs to be done, what is existing, why it needs to be done. Thanks.
Okay. Doesn't matter. It's can you hear me? No. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Right. 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 All those who are online. Well, I hope you had good plus of discussions on too much info. Discussions on discussion on the subject with this tight problems on the net. going to a longish kind of this thing. Until
I think
Nitin,
you'll
you
have to
can
switch off one of your things. You'll have to switch off one of your mics.
No.
It should be fine now.
Can you hear me clearly now? Right. Any questions that anybody has on the entire seminar, whatever was the contents?
I see one of the attendees, Mr. Anjan Sinha, has put up a question in the chat channel. He says that what is the normal MSME player to get into defense? A lot of challenge for a normal MSME player to get into defense sector. I know friends who are exporting their product to EU, European Union, but finds it difficult to sell to defense sector here in the country. This is one of the questions where he's looking for some directions for such players. They can open any panels.
Right. Who can take out that question, please? I'm not able to read it. I'm not too clear about it.
So if you permit, I'll try to answer that question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. See, Indian defense sector is like any other defense sector in any other country. It has got its own stringent norms to be followed. And it's something which any equipment being used by defense people ultimately has got some iota of implication on the life of a soldier. So that's why the standards are very stringent. We have to follow them. Selling it to other countries, European Union also, doesn't necessarily mean that they meet the required standards. In more so, even if it meets such a standard also, let's assume what Ms. Anjan Sinha is saying, that yes, there are standards being met, let's say, still, there is a procedure of procurement within the defense forces which needs to be understood by everyone. It's not complicated the way people realize it or the way people understand it. Series of improvements have been done with defense acquisition procedures, and defense procurement procedures have come out with examples. You just have to go through them and then find a way how to get into the defense sector. Otherwise, I see that Indian defense procurement is also like any other defense procurement around the world. I think other panelists might comment on this, sir.
Any comments anybody has? Marshal, you have any comments on that, or Ausat?
Brigadier Chatterjee, and as Colonel Whelan mentioned, the stringent regulations do exist for defense acquisition, and it's not that I'll be very frank. As Lockheed Martin, we found that MSMEs in India are very, very capable. There are people who are highly competent and capable. I guess, like he said, the acquisition procedure, as Colonel Whelan mentioned, the acquisition procedures in place. You need to learn the acquisition procedure and know how to enter the entire supply chain. I think that's important. Yes.
Anything else, Dr. Nagendra, you have to say?
Yeah, what I can suggest is I really do not know what is that product, but there are various channels in the government, as you know, Valen Sab has mentioned and Gokhale Sab has mentioned. So and as you mentioned, the doors are now wide open. So we can go just find out and then see where this product is applicable to our environment, and then who is the end user. I'm sure, you know, when we just write it to all the tri-forces, at least 98, 99% of the cases I'm getting a reply. Okay, so there is a design bureau cell for each of the tri-forces. Because if you write to them, they'll respond and then they'll let us know whether this product is useful, you know, or if it is required with certain changes in the specifications. All these things will be definitely mentioned. And then if there is an applicability of this product, and the process will be initiated. So there are many measures. Probably if they can write to us, we can give some guidelines also. If they have not dealt with the MOD or defense forces directly, we can do that.
Right. Although I would like to sum up from all your answers is as compared to yesterday, today the road is far wider open, let us say, than what it was yesterday. And there is there are points from where you can get advice along that route that we have to traverse. But the fact remains that producing quality and maintaining that standard, having the skilled force and somehow retaining them, though Dr. Nagendra, perhaps you said that you brought in that point of losing them too fast. These are business. In business, you'll have this kind of problems which have to be found, some of them, and the answers will have to be found in-house by MSMEs. Right. Any last question? This is the last question that we can take. We are already beyond schedule. Mr. Akash Verma. Mr. Akash Verma, you can come on.
I just wanted to know, about the institutional organization that Dr. Nagendra discussed about. Like we should have an organization that should train guys for defense, especially. And we people, being the technical people in the lowest chain of the chain, we don't get to explore ourselves or to grow ourselves with the better technologies with the word. So how this is going to happen and how can we, will this be available for everyone, or is this just, how can we you benefit from this? So I just want to know more about that. Is it this?
You basically want to know what are the kind of, are there any institutions that have really come up or are planned to come up, which will
Yes,
train
sir.
people for the defense sector, isn't it? Well,
Sure.
you see, there are some, I do not know to what extent for they will be trained for manufacturing job or let's say research in the defense sector. Because firstly, there's a lot of common use technology. What's going on in civil aviation is also required in a fighter plane. So there's a lot of common use technology. I guess that's on that work. It's not difficult, but any exclusive organization which provides the skilling or provides the let's say academic requirement for being employed in the defense industry, at least I'm not aware of. If Nitin, you are aware of,
Yes, sir.
you could possibly say that are there any institution? One is like Raksha, let's say university.
Raksha University is has just come up in Gandhinagar, but it is a work in progress in this sector at least. And there is no particular thing what Dr. Nagendra has suggested. Maybe he can design a course and we can take it on going forward. But that is something that we should contemplate, as we think of these important steps for the MSME. But right now, I don't think there are too many institutions like that.
Except for space IIST, so a space school which has been initiated by ISRO. Recently, Dr. Reddy, chairman of Satish Reddy Sab, has also, requested few institutions to come out with specific courses for the defense industry. There, but at a very high level, like MTech programs and things like that. But skill development courses and then other related courses, nothing is there. That's why I'm saying that there is a ecosystem that requires to be built now. Maybe all MSMEs together with a government initiative, maybe. So we will have to initiate something. This is very much needed now. Then only we will be able to really get the fruits of real Atmanirbhar Bharat, because people are very, very important.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not too sure, but it may be worthwhile checking out. Has the National Skill Development Corporation, NSDC, has it got some, you see, although there are those sector-specific skill councils that they have, I am not too sure whether there's a sector-specific skill council for defense also, but there was possibly something called a strategic sector. Nitin, if you recall, we had talked about it once perhaps. If you have any information on the strategic sector skill council, can you just share?
Yes, in fact, there is that they're looking at it as that particular segment of that skill development council, which you had also been part of for a brief period. They look at the defense, the entire defense sector as one, not as skill development for MSMEs, not as for manufacturing, not for particularly upgrading or upskilling the skills required in a particular technical field or in some upcoming technology. I think that is more generic about getting into the defense sector or in working with the defense post retirement, taking advantage of the training in the defense forces. Where do you go? Which companies do you join? That is what that particular organization does. So I think there is a case for very focused syllabus and focused training for these people, but that again will have to be done very thoughtfully and very carefully.
Right. Thank you, Nitin. And all that remains, let me say, as far as I'm concerned, I guess, to just give a very brief vote of thanks to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to, let's say, thank the Ministry of Defense for this opportunity given to bharatshakti.in for hosting this seminar on the web. And we have been able to host this seminar solely because of the three of you gentlemen over there. That is the Air Marshal, Colonel Velan and Dr. Nagendra, all three of you, it's very kind of you to have found the time to join us in our webinar.
Chatterjee, just 2 minutes. There are a couple of questions on the chat box, which I think Aditya or somebody can take it down and we can answer them later. There's one question about email ID of the panelists somebody wants, and there's some MSME manufacturing carbon for rocket and missile applications. We need a guide to source a central lab, something of that kind. So Aditya, please take down this this question and maybe also the email ID, and we'll answer them because we have run out of time. I know. Patrick Dhanasilan, can you send an email ID on the chat box and note down that email ID, please? Sorry.
For carbon cloth related, if they need some help, I can connect them with the concerned labs of DRD.
Submitted. Okay, right. Just to finish with my word of thanks, I've already thanked them. Omodi already thanked all three speakers. I must thank you, Nitin, for joining this webinar, though it's your own webinar in a way, but all the same, thank you. I would like to thank the technical teams which have worked back into put this all together. And more than anybody else, I would like to thank everyone who's logged in. Of course, this will be there on the net, both on the DefExpo site as also on Bharat Shakti YouTube channel, and you can watch it thereafter. Thank you, all of you, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that takes.